so beautiful. It's just like, I'm so, as I said, thrilled for the movie to be seen on the big screen because it's, when New Generation came out, it was in like 5 cities or whatever, played for like 2 days, which is like 3 people. And so nobody's ever seen it the way it's supposed to be seen, and this is the way it's supposed to be seen. But watching it, I was almost like,
I got choked up.
Yeah, it just blew me away. And then I'm so happy that Jim Fealy's here.
Jim Fealy!
I called Slender, saying like 1998, 1999. But I haven't seen Jim forever. And when the first thing I told Marcus when we did the remaster is, the movie is so much more beautiful than I remember. It's just the lighting and Teresa's production design and like the faces of the actors are all just like and it's just like so gorgeous. And I remember when we were looking for a DP that Fealy came up and you had, I don't think done any features before, mainly commercials and many commercials and documentaries, and we hired him because very influenced, as you can probably tell by the movie, by that whole Bruce Webbery aesthetic. And you worked on, did you shoot part of the Being Boring video by Pet Shop Boys? Yeah. Like, that's one of my favorite. Like, I just love that look and that feel and so when we were looking for DPs, I wasn't looking for like a regular, just low budget indie DP. I really wanted somebody with an artistic eye, and I got so lucky and got a home run with Mr. James Fealy. Everybody. But he had no idea what he was in for when he signed up, right? Anyway, I think we're
I think I just want to start by asking you guys to reminisce a little, because it must be insane to return to this 28 years later. That's a long time.
Yeah.
How does it feel? Like, what are your memories? How does the Doom generation sit in all of your memories as an experience?
The making of this movie was extremely hard. It was winter. The second day shooting was the Norfolk earthquake. It was, of course, low budget. No money for it. Like, really, like the schedule was very tight. Of course, for filmmakers in the audience, it's all fucking nights. Like, we would literally start at like 5, 6 p.m. and go home at like 6 a.m. when there's rush hour. I remember when we were shooting at the fucking warehouse. It's a miracle like I didn't die, because you're so tired. That warehouse we shot in was disgusting. It was, when you shoot in a warehouse now, like I worked on that show 13 Reasons, and they literally, when you have a budget, it's like, it's a brand new clean warehouse, and we just make fake dirt and fake junk and fake rat poop. All of it is like been detoxed. And, like, this place was a real fucking abandoned dump. And it was really scary, really fucking cold. You remember Peter Backel, the AD, used to like, I remember we would wrap at like 6 a.m., the sun's coming up, and he was like cracking open the 6-pack, drinking like to get home. Like, literally, he's just like, it was really such a hard shoot, but I look back on it with such fondness. It's one of my happiest memories. I mean, it was tough, but so worth it. And also, as I said, the fans behind this movie have been so loyal. Sorry, it really means a lot. Let's hear other people.
It was, well, I was so young and impressionable at the time, and Greg and I had just done Totally Fucked Up, and for me it was really like just no holds barred, going on the journey and like just jumping into the hole and going for it. And we really did fly by the seat of our pants. I think we shot the entire thing in 28 days.
Shooting like 24.
We had 6-day weeks, and then amazingly on the first day, because we were shooting on film, we got the first day done, and it was, right before the earthquake, so right before it started to get really sort of very difficult. And we should have known something was going on when the next day they go, oh yeah, the lab's scrapped, the whole day's done, we have to reshoot the whole day.
First day dailies, scrapped, I had to reshoot it.
in the
Thrift
lab.
store.
That's how we started it off. And you're like, okay, well, this is a good, and in a way, it's a good start for Doom. Because,
They say you're never supposed to name a movie things like Doom Generation because it literally you curse your production, and it was cursed. There were a lot of fucking.
it was the resilience that we had. So yeah, the second day of shooting, it's 4 a.m. There's the Northridge quake, and I remember waking up with the ceiling coming down on my head, and the transformers were going off like nuclear explosions because of the earthquake was, destroying all the electrical lines, and we weren't sure what's going on. And we were pretty sure when it was done, because the entire city was flat once when the freeways fell, that we weren't going to shoot. Of course, Jonathan still showed up to my house because he's X, and that's what X does.
He's like loves earthquakes.
Yeah, and it's amazing also because from the moment that I met Jonathan, when he came to the audition, we bonded. So even before he was cast, we were hanging out and kind of spending time together.
Yeah, Jonathan at the time was very method and very like, I remember the first things he said to me was like, so he's fucking her, but he really wants to fuck him, right? And I'm all, pretty much. Like they really, like they're constantly like, whenever you get beepers, like where did Jimmy and Jonathan go? They always go off and have these adventures. Like,
Now he had this, so he would pick me up in his little like pickup truck, and then we would like, they had to page us because if they didn't need us, be like, can I go for a drive? Yeah, let's go for a drive.
Everyone wants to know though, did you fuck? That's my only other
We're very professional. We didn't do it on the clock. We clocked out. No, I remember, and so the earthquake hit. So,
Anyway, moving on.
And we showed up and nobody was there. It was this, we were supposed to shoot Perry Farrell that day, the 666. And we showed up and it literally was, as we were driving back, the entire, like it was flattened. Freeways were missing, gas stations, the whole city was shut down. It was flattened. We get back to our place, I think he picked me up at 5:30, we got back at 8 a.m. and I get a page. So I had lived up in the hills at times, so I had to walk down half a mile and go to the payphone. And you guys wait till I get back before you page me again, yeah. And like, oh yeah.
People who don't know this, it's a phone change. How do you what's a payphone?
You had to memorize people's numbers unless they came in on the page, or otherwise you couldn't call anybody. But the incredible thing is I remember thinking, okay, the city's wasted. We're definitely not shooting today. Get home, get the page, run downstairs, make the phone calls like, oh yeah, I know, so sorry you weren't there, but it's gonna be 11 o'clock call now. The Jenny's powered up. We have to shoot. So we showed up, and this I also remember this with Jim, and the first week we're shooting a lot of the car stuff, so they put the car in a car hitch. Because the car was so large, they couldn't open the doors, so the grips had to hotwire the windows to get us in, and then hotwire the windows shuts for sound.
Yeah,
so
that car literally was fucking,
Yeah,
it
and
would
we're
never
shooting
start, it was always a problem.
I
Like,
mean,
it was
honestly,
a nightmare. I remember because Therese like, good news, because it would cost so much to rent a shitty car like that. So I just bought a car on fucking Craigslist for like $500 or whatever. It's like, oh, okay. And then it literally would never run. Like the windows would get stuck, it would like not start. It was...
Well, they had the aftershocks from the earthquake, and they had to pull over, and we're shooting in a valley, and you can see the rocks coming down. And you're like, guys, we can't get out of the car.
Was that the first day when we shot the tow rig? Or was it
We shot.
I remember we shot. That was one thing for Jim. I remember definitely we shot that breakfast scene. We're outside the Quickie Mart, and the lighting in that fucking scene is so incredible. Like it's like when I was looking at it, I was like, holy shit, this is so gorgeous. But yeah, we shot where X and Amy and did the whole thing, sniff my finger and all that.
Yeah, so
We
that
shot
was
that.
the day of the aftershock. It hit, and Jonathan just hot. He must have ate 10 pies. One whole.
Because he's method, he's like a fakey.
He got sick from it, but at one point it started to shake. Everything started. The camera started shaking. I just saw Jim grab on the camera, because the camera almost fell over. Yeah. We're like, oh yeah, that's a 35 millimeter Panavision $500,000 camera. That's the budget of our movie.
Well, what I remember from that is if you look at the frames, sometimes you can see the little hanging balls and back windows. You see the earthquakes shimmering because they would start to move around. because there was subtle earthquake.
Yeah,
the
there
whole
were
time.
aftershocks happening
Oh,
well
I'm from
from
New
shore.
York originally, these guys are California. And so I really didn't know about earthquakes or what an earthquake was. So I got up in the morning, the alarm went off, the earthquake hit, and I was walking down the hallway, and it was like on a boat. I was on a boat, and it was like going from side to side. I thought nothing of it. I called Malik, I said, Malik, I'm coming. He's like, you can't come. They picked me up, we're just having an earthquake. So that's how I learned about the earthquake. So we did anyhow, we shot that very day. It was on top of
Never say die. Just keep shooting. Just keep on shooting.
That really is the story of this film, is that there's so many adversities, lost the first day's dailies, the crew kept leaving, quitting. Where's the key grip? He's like, oh, he just didn't show up today.
When the sound department didn't show up that one day, like literally, it's like boom operator and the sound guy, like they're just not there. Where the fuck are they?
Yeah, right. So, but you just go on with it, and it's kind of a tribute to Gregg and.
Well, it makes the movie even better. You know, like we fucking did it.
It's not comfortable at the time, but in looking back at it, it's becomes humorous.
Because Jim was talking, we were talking on the phone about Malik. Talk about Malik. That was fucking crazy.
Well, I think it was we had 3, or if they listed, I don't think they could even track it in the credits, because it's like we had a different gaffer every 2 days. And it was the guy that was behind that gaffer, right? We had the gaffer, and then we had his second, and then we had the third, who was the gaffer. So Malik
The intern was lighting the movie.
Yeah.
But that's what I mean. It's just like you don't. It's seamless. Like it's just like frame one to the end, just so beautiful, so perfectly lit shot. I just can't. I mean, hats off to you. Like,
Well, hats off to you as well, because when my training coming into this, the type of photography you said, the Pet Shop Boys and things of that nature, was very fluid and mobile, like handheld and running around, and it was never just about the lighting. But when I began to work with Gregg, and when we decided what our roles were going to be, Gregg had shot his previous film, so he was looking for a kind of, this is a new relationship with him, and he had everything completely boarded, right? Every shot, and I'm like, what is this? This isn't going. We're not going to do it like that, are we? But sure enough, we did it exactly like that.
You look at the movie, it's like, yep, exactly, shot for shot.
Like I would frame something else, like with the pictures like this.
Yeah.
And so, but it really made me put my effort into the lighting, and to design the lighting to flow throughout the whole picture. We didn't have dailies. We saw dailies maybe once or twice on the weekend. It was a 6-day shoot. So I would take pictures, and those were my dailies that I would get back from lab. It was on the same film stock and everything. So I was putting them in files and trying to track how the picture looked. So we were taking pictures. So that was an interesting thing too, because mainly in films you go look at the dailies and you get talk, but we didn't get to do that.
Oh yeah, I think it really set the precedent for the film though. We went on an adventure, and it really was nonstop until we finished it. Even all you could do on the day off is sleep, get ready for the next 6 days. So I think the first week was all days, and the next 3 weeks were all nights.
The nights begin.
Yes.
It's really, for people who are in production stuff, night shoots are really hard, and you just are in it, which worked for this movie. I mean, totally, we were just all like zombies. I mean, you were just in a different headspace. It was super weird. I was also like, my boyfriend was the script supervisor, and we were fighting. It was just, like, literally, it was just so hard. I remember just, oh God, this is fucking hard. But it's fucking worth it. New generation.
Yeah, but still, as hard as it is, and all that adversity, as hard as it was, the feeling that you got after you finished a day of accomplishment was quite something, and that was the thing that I think really kept us going. It was like every time, I can't believe we did this. It's like I didn't think we would be able, because we didn't have sound today, because it was an earthquake. Like the earthquake's not stopping.
Nothing can stop us.
And there were certainly points, even during that, when I think, I can say this confidence, all three rows, Jonathan and I felt like it was us against the world. There were certainly those moments, and I think that served the film very well.
it's the kind of movie that I think it's my favorite kind of movie when you watch it and you just go, how the fuck did this get made? This is so cool. I think like
They don't make them like this anymore.
they don't. Trust me, I
Now
know.
this is coming from this man.
It's definitely not a heterosexual movie.
Actually, should I tell this heterosexual movie story? There's actually a story about it, and Jim Stark, the producer, is here somewhere in the audience tonight. Jim Stark was one of the producers of Living End, and I remember him saying, you make these, because I made Living End until I fucked up, basically on my own for 20 grand, or Marcus's mom wrote a check or something. I don't know how those movies ever got made, but he saw that if you make these gay movies that are so punk rock that they freak out the gay people, And Living End was certainly that. I mean, it's just like, it was so polarizing. And like, when we played the Castro, there was like a protest of lesbians outside. It was anti-lesbian because of the serial killers. Like, it was just very like un-PC in a very kind of, me sort of way. So he saw, if you make a heterosexual movie, I'll get you real money for it. And I'm like, okay. So, in my sort of punk rock bratty way, I made, the queerest, gayest straight movie ever. And it was very specific, and it's so cool. Because at the time, I was just thinking of it being very much like a Trojan horse, you know what I mean? In the sense that, and I've had people, interestingly, it works, I guess. I've had people come up to me and say, Doom Generation made me fucking gay. You know what I mean? It's just, because it's like, the poster is, gorgeous Amy Blue and her tits, and there's like a lot of, straight stuff going on. So Doom Generation, the idea behind it is that it would sort of span, everybody of all persuasions, and in a way that the audience that is not going to go see The Living End without two gay guys with guns in their mouths. It was this other audience that was like, oh, okay. And I actually did an interview last week with a writer who was a white, cis, straight man, and he said, this movie changed my fucking life. I'm the son of a pastor, and I grew up in a very conservative world, and this movie opened my eyes to the big world, and made me more tolerant, made me a different person. And that's like, for me, as a filmmaker, I'm obviously not the type of filmmaker that's gonna win Oscars, like make Marvel movies or whatever. But it's like the highest compliment they could ever pay me, and that my movie touched them in such a way and was so meaningful to them. And that's really why I make movies.
I think it's like perspective on itself.
You guys should be applauded.
The movie's like perspective on the time when it's. I think like growing up, you watch like the John Hughes movies on VHS, and just this sort of like idea of like the teenage kind of road trip movie, and then you see this one, and it feels like so like a reaction to those movies, or like a stiffer drink of, like a gayer drink.
Much stiffer.
And the movie also just is so much like it's made in '95, and just the music that you're using, and these clips of television that you're using, and like this sort of overall MTV aesthetic of it. It's like, it seems like very aware of itself as being made in a certain like culture and climate. And I wonder if you could talk about like your perspective while you were making it on all of that.
It was just very, one of the things about my movies, I went to film school on a very much film school tour at that time when film school was a real thing, and everybody in my class, they all wanted to be Kubrick, or they want to be Scorsese, or I want to be Godard. Everybody wants to be this auteur with a point of view, and so that's kind of how I approach movies. And my aesthetic and my worldview is always so rooted in pop culture, and especially music. And I grew up just exactly at the right moment. I graduated high school in '78, so it was just at the time of punk rock music, new wave music, the Talking Heads, Susie and the Banshees, you know, the Smiths, like all of it. And it was really life-changing for me because it was very much what my movies are. You know what I mean? It's just really about marching to your own drummer, doing your own thing, hoping that your tribe will find you and will find your work. But it's not intended for everybody. You know what I mean? It's not meant to please the masses and the mainstream. It's really about, you know, when I made Doom Generation and, you know, and basically Kaboom, all my movies, it's just really this old school, film school, brat, sort of, you know, queer punk, and very like just literally expressing myself. If I was a poet, that Doom Generation would be my poem. And so I would just like keep note, like, it's funny, like, you know, people always think like Jimmy because he's Asian and, you know, people are racist, but I'm actually probably more Amy Blue, and a lot of the things, I would just keep like notebooks of like ideas and quotes and lines, and a lot of the things that Amy says, like life is lonely, boring, and dumb. I wrote that in a notebook, like literally, and it came out of my head and it went straight into, you know, and I kept it and put it in the script. So it's that kind of just like purely creative, like not like thinking like, oh goodness, like, will this offend somebody? And you know, the end scene of the movie, which is so like horrifying, it is again something that was in my notebook. This happened in my hometown, and it was something I'm like, one day I'm gonna put that in a movie. So it was just a lot of incorporating like purely personal details. That one of the scenes in the movie that makes me cringe today, but you know, it's in the 90s, so please forgive me. It's like when X is talking about killing the parking cop, and he mentions that she has a kinky fro. I'm just like, yeah. But it literally, I used to live in an apartment where the park, and it didn't have a garage, so I parked on the street, and the parking cops would literally stalk you. And there was a one in particular that wanted to always get me, and then, you know, it's like a $50 ticket or something every time you get caught. And so it was literally that, like literally my fantasy in my head, like, yeah, I'm gonna fucking kill her one day. I'm gonna kill her. But you know, the X character lets you go there, lets you go into that psychotic kind of space. So that's kind of the way, you know, just my boyfriend always says when I answer a question, it's just like a tangent that just goes over here and the question's not answered. That's my non-answer.
You answered. It's like, yeah, let's talk about the violence. I think like as your movies go on, they sort of enter these like more and more sort of like genre, almost like B-movie horror spaces that certainly are like totally there in the early work, but not maybe, you know, not as blood and gory. But it to me, it like totally fucked up as like a brutal movie. And this is a brutal movie in a very different way. I wonder if you could talk about like how your filmmaking was developing at this time and why you wanted to make a movie with like this level of sort of off-putting gore and violence.
Yeah, it's, you know, sometimes I just don't even know where it comes from, really. You know, I remember sitting down to write the script, and I was like, oh, okay, Amy Blue, Jordan White, Xavier Red, like these three people, this triangle. You know, it's like that Lewis movie, Designed for Living, this threesome. It's a road movie like Bonnie and Clyde, or They Live by Night. You know, it's like, and I knew always that it was ending there, like where the ending was. You know what I mean? So I knew that it was, and the Jimmy character to me is sort of the symbolic character of innocence. Like he's like too innocent to live in this world. He's too pure for this world, which is kind of a little bit his recurring character throughout the trilogy, because at least Dark Smith in Nowhere doesn't get killed. He's the only one that lives, but Andy and Jordan both don't make it to the end. But so there was just that general framework, and then from there, the movie just kind of conjured itself. You know, it was like this road movie, and crazy things happened. But things like the Red Room and the Checkered Room, that was, you know, collaboration with Therese. I want to go to this crazy, stylized, Lynchian, nightmarish, surreal place.
Glad you did. I'm gonna go back.
I find reality boring as a filmmaker, so it's not really, I'm like, oh, that film's so realistic. It's like not really my thing.
This feels realistic to me. That is correct.
I wonder what your life is like.
I want to open it up to you guys because we have about 10 minutes left, so we'll take some questions from the other fans. Front row.
How did you get some of the cameos? They were so random.
Question is, how did you get so many random
The
cameos?
cameos, it was part of the sort of lynchy surreal aspect of the movie. I told cast members, I want all of the cameos. To me, it wasn't like, oh, cheesy cameo by Julie from the Love Boat. It was more the idea that when you're having a dream, the faces that appear in your dreams are always familiar. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, oh, some weird, like some guy from a commercial is suddenly in my dream. It's like they're in your subconscious, and I wanted the film to feel like that kind of waking dream state.
Right, second row. We'll just keep going.
I know, the front rows always have an advantage. This guy's gonna ask the question.
How did you pick the music for your film?
The music was very, the Nine Inch Nails song is actually in the script. It's not that song, but I think the first page of the script, which I donated to the Academy Museum, so if anybody that wants to read it, it literally says, the soundtrack of this movie is going to be composed by Nine Inch Nails. That was my dream. I was just like, and I always call this movie my Nine Inch Nails movie. It's just like, I was young and I was angry and God damn it, America. And now it's just like, America's almost worse. I'm sad.
Gregg's scripts are works of art in their own, to be quite honest, and everything you see on the page is on there, but there's things that he talks about that play only to the reader. So yeah, one of them I remember reading the script was just like, with a soundtrack by like Trent, Nine Inch Nails, Reznor, like yeah! And then it's like, and then it talks about X, and it's like he reaches down the screen, and he goes, he reaches down into his pants to grab oh, but this is a family film, of course. So he literally says that this is a family film, of course. It's things like that. It really makes these scripts and works of art, I'm telling you, on their own. So if you get a chance to read it, read it.
Third row.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the theme of like polyamory in this film and in movie work generally.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I've been doing this a long time, and all of my movies, there's just that's one of the things, again, I'm from film school, and it's all about the auteur theory and people with the specific, motifs and recurring themes, and this, the idea that there are these sort of Gregg Araki-esque things, and one of them is threesomes. So the first film I ever made is called Three Cooler People in the Night, and it's this black and white 16mm movie I made straight out of film school. And literally, it's the same. It's a bisexual guy, a gay lead guy, and his heterosexual female best friend. And everything I've done, including my TV show, is always just like a gay guy with his heterosexual female friend. And I think it's because those relationships in my life have been very important. Living in is the same thing. And so, and the threesome idea was, the Design for Living is a movie I love from film school, and it was just like, I think also, I feel like so fortunate, in terms of being a person of color, being queer, and just having this sort of outsider sensibility and outsider point of view. I mean, to me, there's nothing that's more done and more overt than like a heterosexual cis white boy meets girl stuff. I remember, I don't want to offend anybody in the audience, but I saw that movie, what's it called? Everybody was raving about it, and I was like, it's the movie, it has the girl from Harry Potter in it, and the...
Person being a wallflower?
What?
Person being a wallflower?
Yes, that's it. Okay, it has a Cocteau song in it. It's set in the 80s, right? And I'm all, okay, I'm down, I'll see it. And I watch it, I'm all, is this the story of a shy boy who wants to kiss the pretty girl? Like, seriously, are you gonna make me watch this? And I'm like, yes, that's what this movie fucking is. And I'm all, I don't need to see this story. I don't care how well it's done. And it was not well done, I'm sorry. This is also being recorded, so I feel bad.
just direct it, I see it.
Okay, but anyway, just between you and me, and don't anybody tweet about this. And this is why I hated that movie so much. Like, she had like a punk rock friend or something, I don't know, some sort of bullshit like that. It's like, okay, I heard this new song, it's by this obscure band or whatever, it's gonna change your life. It's like Heroes by David Bowie. I'm sorry, no. Like one of the one of the well-known fucking like important songs in the history of like punk new wave like alternative music. Sorry. Like my lucky's like right there. Okay.
Sorry.
See another tangent, right?
No, I mean, I think we would all love to hear you shit talk any movie you would like to.
I don't do that anymore.
Right there.
Hi. I'm curious how you feel about when people critique you for not making films that aren't gay enough after the 90s and everything, and how you feel about maybe being held to a standard to follow a certain message that because you're called a father of the nuclear cinema. Like how you feel about
Or the mother.
expectations. Yeah.
I think the question is, films made since the 90s have been accused, perhaps, or how would you say it?
I would say
Criticized?
Yeah, like because you were named as sort of father or mother of nuclear cinema, you're always cited for that. How you feel about when people might hold you to an expectation to make.
You are a parent of nuclear cinema.
Godmother, father and mother.
And they say your new movies aren't gay enough, I guess is the question.
Yeah.
What do you say to these haters? I think every movie I've ever seen by you is
I don't think I've ever done, and it's also funny because I've done some episodic stuff. You know, episodic things, it's not my show, I don't write it, it's like literally they just hand you a script and you direct it and it's a job for like 5 days or whatever. And they always hand me the gayest fucking idea. Like the show Riverdale, and it's like, okay, this is a wrestling episode. And I'm all, okay, whatever. You know what I mean? So they always hand me the gayest fucking like episode. So, and also funny thing, they hand me the basketball episode all the time. I don't know anything about basketball. Anyway, another tangent. It's, you know, I've heard like all of the queer new wave filmmakers, Todd Haynes and Tom Kalin, and you know certainly Christine Beauchamp produced all the movies except for mine, and it's like this expectation of like doing whatever representing, and it's like none of us are like that. We all just are all artists and we all just express ourselves and do our own thing, and it's like I always feel like the people who get me, and the people who hate me just fucking hate me, and they hate me even more for whatever reason. So as a filmmaker, I never think about that. It's really just what's the next thing that I want to do. Cool. And Jane feels the same way, but
I mean, I often get accused of not making gay enough gay movies.
All that being said, has anyone here seen Now Apocalypse? I think that's pretty Gregg Araki.
that was literally like a dream project of mine, and because I've been wanting to make a TV show like that since Nowhere, and that's actually why there's so many call-outs to Nowhere in Now Apocalypse, and they literally because T. Soundry was an executive producer, they gave us it was made under his girlfriend experience deal, which was basically I'll do this indie TV show for a low budget, which was $1 million per episode, which in TV is actually quite low when you consider some of these Apple shows are 10, 15 million fucking episodes. They're spending hundreds of millions of dollars on this stuff. 13 Reasons Why was huge, and I just worked on Dahmer, same thing. I've never been on a set with so many fucking people during COVID, no less. And so they let us make the show, and the idea with Soderbergh is that you make for its indie budget, but you have total creative freedom, and we can't tell you what to do. And the stars people were actually kind of awesome and crazy. You know, what sucked was that was my executive got fired because they actually paid us to write season 2, and we were ready to go and all that, and then, but you know, it's Hollywood. But anyway, the idea being that this show was, I remember when Carly, my co-writer, and I were pitching it, I'm so used to talking to studio people or investors or whoever going, don't worry, like when I wrote Kaboom, like, this is like porno, like, what are you doing? I was like, don't worry, it's gonna be R-rated, it's not gonna be as racy as it reads, da, 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 da. And Star's like, no, we want more, like, bring it on, bring it on. And so it was a great home for me, and they literally let us get away with fucking murder. And so I described that show in interviews as, for people who are fans of Nowhere and Doom and whatever, it's like literally my mind just like unleashed. It's crazy. And has fabulous Roxanne Mesquita in it from Kaboom, and Jimmy as a very, well, we won't give it away.
I have to ask.
You can get a Stars app for free and then binge it and then dump it. So Stars, none of my fans have Stars because most of my fans are kind of poor, right? And so I was told Stars, I said, I don't know if you're the right network for us because you have a bunch of like Outlander fans and like kind of like middle-aged kind of basic ladies, and power fans. And the exec at the time that we were pitching the show to told no, we are totally trying to get a new demographic. That's when they had Beta and Sweet Bitter and all these other shows. Like, we want a younger audience, we want a hipper audience, we're having some app, we're doing all this shit. And then he got fired, so. And end of story.
When are we going to see another Gregg Araki TV show or movie?
Hopefully soon, I don't know. Does anybody writing checks out there? Not my fans, they're all like, no, sorry, we're cool. We can't afford we can't afford $8.99 a month for Stars.
Any Stars execs in the audience tonight? Do we have time for one more? 2 more? How many more do we have time for? All right, we'll do
Something
2 more.
for these guys.
Yeah, anyone have a question for these guys? Right here.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of your movies. It seems like James is like your muse. Like, he seems to be like the person that could reoccurring the most. I was just wondering how you two like first started working together, or like how you guys met.
Take it away.
We met in Hollywood when I just turned 8. Before I was 18, when I was 16, I used to come to Hollywood. It's amazing. Greg was talking about the importance of music and what role that played in his life, especially punk rock alternative music. And it was exactly the same thing for me. Growing up in LA at the time that I grew up, being with a multicultural background was difficult. And so I was always an outcast. And I was always viewed racially and sexually as different. And it's difficult.
Jimmy's straight, by the way, so.
I'm straight, but
Jimmy would always tell people when we was in press, like, I'm like bisexual or whatever. Jimmy, you have to have like such a dick to be bisexual. You can't like, oh yeah, like some boys are pretty, that makes me bisexual.
But what it was is like,
it's how it works now, right? There's like like LGBT is like it's like all very nowhere now. Everybody's very fluid, but you gotta do something, right? Something has to happen.
Well, here's the thing, I'm not, so don't tweet this, I'm not trying to promote anything, on Twitter or anything like that. But that's the thing, so for me growing up, we were in junior high, and we were in high school, and you didn't speak about that stuff. We all kissed each other, we all touched each other, we all did that stuff, we were exploring, it was a very innocent thing to do. And you could not talk about it because you would be vilified if you did something like that. You would be outcast. And I was. There was a couple times, when, I'm not so ashamed of it now. I won't say names, so I'm not outing anybody. But, like, hey, let's take a look at how big we all are. So it got to the point where I had some friends I couldn't go to
That's a
the
circle jerk. That doesn't count.
No, it started at a very young age. I won't go into how young it was, but let's just say it got to the point where I wasn't allowed to hang out with my friends anymore because I was doing certain things that they told their mom and they weren't very comfortable with. So, you know, again, so it was, again, I was like kind of outcast and trying to search for myself and find myself. And when I had met Gregg at 18, I'd already been coming into Hollywood for a couple of years. And again, searching for myself and trying to find meaning in my life, what I wanted to do, what was going on. And I used to see this kid in a cafe all the time when I was 18. I thought, this is amazing. Look at him here, he's always doing his homework. I
He was like 27 or something.
He was 27, but he looked my age. And I thought, this is amazing that we could coexist in the same place. I'm completely directionless and poor and loitering and getting free coffee from the guys that I became really good friends with. And here's someone who's responsible doing what he's supposed to do to ensure a positive future. And one day this guy kind of comes up to me and he says, excuse me, I don't know if you're an actor, but I'm this no-budget filmmaker. And I make these low-budget indie movies, but you have a very interesting look, and I don't know if you'd be interested in reading the script. And it's a script for Totally Fucked Up. And, you know, speaking further about it, so he sent me the script for Totally Fucked Up. And it was the first time that I'd read a screenplay. I'd done theater a little bit when I was younger, but I'd read a script like that, but I had identified with Andy in particular in a way that, you know, I've not spoken about publicly in quite a few years, and in some ways never like this. But I met Gregg and he gave me the role of Steven. And I was really very happy to be playing Steven, very happy to be part of the movie. And I thought I was going in for an audition where I was reading with all the actors. And I remember finishing reading with him and going home, and Andrea called me, it's Andrea Sperling, and she says, you know, so Gregg and I were talking, and you were great, Steven, but actually Gregg thinks you might be much better for the Andy character. Are you okay with that? And I thought, yeah, I think I can work that out. And the thing for me was, like, identified, you know, and Andy's going through those struggles too. Certainly, you know, I think, you know, once you go on the Kinsey spectrum, he's a lot more on the, you know, the 10 spectrum than I was. But I certainly, because I had a background of that, and I was at the point where I didn't feel like I could talk about that openly with people, because I was treated very badly for that as a child, for being open, and for being sexually open like that. And for me, like, getting cast in Gregg's movies and even doing Totally Fucked Up for the first time was one of the first times I was able to accept myself, actually. So it was a very cathartic experience for me from the very beginning. I don't think Gregg knows this. I've never told you this.
And on that movie too, it was very much like this in it. Like you and Alan were totally like this.
Yeah.
Like that relationship was like very like intense.
And there's still points, you know, where now I'm in a much different place, so I'm okay talking about it, but like I said, I don't know if the people that I have these experiences with are okay with me talking about it. So I can talk about it, but I can't name them. Not that any of you know them. But I know, even if I haven't spoken in 20, 30 years, I'd probably hear something. It's like, well, you should have done that with me.
Do we have one final question? We gotta make it a good
Someone
one.
in the back.
Yeah, we gotta show the, yeah, right there, with the head still up, yes.
So I was a little curious about a little bit more of the backstory of This Is How the World Ends, and if we'd ever see episode 2.
Deep cut, Araki nerd question.
Yeah, because in between Nowhere and Now Apocalypse, This Is How the World Ends was also another. It's really funny. Every time I go to pitch a show, like Nowhere was like, it's Beverly Hills 90210 on acid with like, it's like literally always like, it's Beverly Hills 90210 crossed with Twin Peaks. And for This Is How the World Ends, it's Dawson's Creek crossed with Twin Peaks. and Now Pop is almost like kind of queer Sex and the City crossed with Twin Peaks. And so This Is How the World Ends was the same thing. Right after from Splinter, that Jim shot so beautifully, MTV approached me and they're like, oh, yeah, I guess it's just my luck or something. I don't know. I guess I get to make something, so it's cool. But it was like the same thing. MTV's all, we are no longer gonna make like reality shit. Like we want to make scripted stuff. We want to be a real network. We want to do, because it was right when Dawson's Creek, all that WB or whatever that thing was taking off, and like young people and like, can you make us a show, you know, that is, you know, appealing to young people, which is obviously kind of your thing. And I said, yeah, sure, it's going to be Dawson's Creek meets Twin Peaks. And it was that, and Joanna Ray actually cast it, who cast Twin Peaks, and she cast Kaboom also. And so same thing. It's funny because they were like, okay, we're gonna finance a pilot, but we're only gonna give you enough money to shoot like what's called a presentation, which is like half a pilot. And I just said, you know what? I'm an indie filmmaker. Just give me that money, and we'll make a whole goddamn pilot for you. So we did, and it was crazy, and we shot it. It was a really cool thing, and I think again, I wrote 2 or 3 episodes.
Yeah, I have episodes.
Yeah, and I wrote the
It's
second
amazing.
episode, but there is a scene in the end of the second episode, I think, that is the last scene of Nowpocalypse. So I'm not opposed to stealing for myself, basically. but
Technically never got made, so.
but
never
yeah,
got
no,
made.
but it was frustrating because it would have been a super cool show for them, but again, same thing. They were like, oh yeah, there's been a regime change. We're actually diving into reality, and now it's all about like the Osbournes was happening, all this shit was happening in the reality world. And that's when Survivor started, and all like the networks then also started doing reality. So it was sort of like, oh, we changed our minds, we're doing something else now.
Just one guy went from MTV to Stars to.
Well, also before that, so this is something that Greg, I know I don't want to keep this too long, but this is something Greg had been trying to work on for quite some time in the 90s, and I believe it was HBO, was it, with Nowhere? We're interested in doing
No, I
a
actually
series.
pitched Nowhere to fucking like ABC. Like
Yeah,
I remember
because I
going to
have-
fucking meetings, and
I have the
it's-
second episode of Nowhere.
It's beautiful teenagers fucking, and it's like, what? What is that? That's not a show. That's just like, no, trust me. It's like, and it's and the thing I mean, whatever. But those episodes, it's the same thing with season 2 of Nowpocalypse, which is like why I guess I need to make something that doesn't get canceled or actually gets picked up, because the second episode of This How the World Ends and also Nowhere, it gets like the world's set up and it just gets crazier and crazier. Like the second episode of Nowhere, there's like Egg's funeral and her body levitates out of the car. I mean, it's fucking crazy.
Montgomery, who explodes, now comes back as Cliff.
Yeah, he comes back
green
as
eyes and
Cliff.
blue eyes and flipped in his black hair.
Yeah, it's like literally like the craziest shit. Like it's like
And him and Lucifer want to kill me.
Lucifer's
They're trying to kill Dark.
Lucifer's trying to kill Dark. His mom at the end of.
Cowboy's destroyed because Bart killed himself by putting his head in the oven, and Bart comes over crying.
And Bart keeps like reappearing.
Yeah.
No, actually, I shot a scene of that in the Nowhere script for that Kenzo short. It's called Here Now, and it's like, and actually interestingly, Avin, who's in Nowpocalypse, is sort of playing like Jimmy's character, and everybody in that short is actually in either Nowpocalypse or something else I've done. Nicola Liberté is in it. Jane Levy's in it. It's cool, but there's basically all the characters from Nowhere, Dark and Mel and Alyssa is none. Anyway, another digression.
I think I speak for everyone when I say that we definitely want more of the Gregg Araki cinematic universe. Bring it all back.
Get 2 million. Thank you so much, everybody.